Ryan's heart nearly stopped when he heard the ancient human warship's fusion core hum to life as the Tak-Tak Admiral barked the order to fire the outlawed bioweapons at the rival Kular homeworld. It was supposed to be a relic, the broken corpse of the last great human warship, the Enola Gay II, now relegated to a forgotten corner of the galaxy's most prestigious military museum deep within Tak-Tak space. And Ryan was its reluctant custodian, an old man with tired eyes and a mop, wiping away the literal and proverbial dust that had settled upon his species' legacy after the bombs fell centuries ago. The bombs that had burned away humanity's hubris, along with most life on Earth. Only a handful of human survivors remained, broken and lost, when the Tak-Tak found them huddling in the ruins. The Tak-Tak shared their technology and helped rebuild, but only if the humans swore to remain a pacifist protectorate under Tak-Tak galactic law. The humans agreed, and that law stated that no human could bear arms, command ships, or go near Tak-Tak military hardware or facilities ever again. Ryan was the sole exception, but only because he pushed a mop. The Tak-Tak had grown lax in their security and only posted a few drowsy guards in the museum, even around their precious military toys from the Kular Wars. Toys that now seemed to be waking up, Ryan realized with a spike of fear, as he heard the click-clack of Admiral Xanth's spindly legs upon the grated deck, and the guttural click of tactical commands being tapped out on the bridge consoles. Ryan knew he had to act, but carefully. Breaking Tak-Tak military law, even for humans, carried a swift death sentence. But allowing a genocide carried a sentence far worse. Ryan waited until the dreary midnight shift, when the museum's skeletal night crew slogged through their rounds. He swiped his janitor keycard at a rusted side entrance, his heart skipping a beat until the light blinked green. Ryan slipped inside the cavernous hangar, his footsteps echoing off the vaulted ceilings. The Enola Gay II loomed before him, her once proud hull now entombed in a shrine to Tak-Tak military might. Ryan crept up the boarding ramp, the metal cold even through his shoes. The Tak-Tak had welded it halfway open, just enough for their touring school children to gawk at the spartanly furnished interior, but not enough for anyone to actually enter. Anyone except a scrawny human janitor with barely enough meat on his bones to squeeze through. "Just find the control room, Ryan. Find something to stop this madness," he muttered, his voice absorbed by the claustrophobic passageways as he groped for a light panel. Ryan's fingers brushed a switch, and he eagerly pressed it, hoping for illumination. Instead, a deep rumble filled the ship as something ancient stirred beneath the decks. He steadied himself against a bulkhead as the floor lurched, emergency lights flickering on to bathe the corridor in a hellish red glow. "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit." It wasn't possible. It shouldn't be possible. This ship was decommissioned. Ryan had seen the paperwork himself, signed by Admiral Xanth and a dozen other Tak-Tak bureaucrats. The Enola Gay II was supposed to be dead, a powerless memorial to a shameful past. But the growing whine of fusion engines and the clatter of screens and keypads coming to life around him told a very different story. The Tak-Tak had lied. This museum piece was still fully operational. Judging by the speed of its startup sequence, it had been meticulously maintained for the day it would be needed again. The enormity of the Tak-Tak's betrayal paled in comparison to the reality of Ryan's situation. A klaxon blared, nearly drowning out the string of panicked Tak-Tak voices spilling from the command deck speakers. He'd tripped an alarm. They knew. They knew, and here he was, a human, a member of a species banned from being within a light year of Tak-Tak military vessels, standing on the bridge of the most powerful warship to ever scar the stars. Xanth's grating voice rose above the din, barking orders to seize the intruder, to use whatever force necessary. Ryan lunged for the pilot's seat, strapping in with shaking hands as he scanned the archaic human control labels. There was no time for a systems check, no time to even figure out what half of these buttons did. Sweat dripped into his eyes as he rammed the launch lever forward, the engines screaming as their heat bled through the hull. The Enola Gay II blasted forward, ripping free of her moorings in a shriek of tortured metal. Gantries and the remains of the hangar's front doors rained around her as she bullied her way into open air, Ryan clinging to the controls as the force of their acceleration pushed him back into his seat. Proximity alerts joined the cacophony of sirens as the TAC defensive batteries swiveled to track the escaped ship. Ryan wrenched the stick, sending the Enola Gay 2 careening to the side seconds before a volley of shots scorched past. "The Kular are innocent. Xanth is lying to you," Ryan screamed into the comms, not knowing if anyone could hear him. Admiral Xanth's imperious visage dominated the view screens. His compound eyes narrowed in fury as he beheld the human before him. "Destroy that ship," he roared. "The human cannot be allowed to undermine our crusade." A new wave of dread settled in Ryan's stomach as a monstrous shadow fell across the Enola Gay 2. Xanth's personal cruiser, the Inexorable, moved to block his path, her forward batteries glowing as they prepared to fire. Muscle memory flooded back as Ryan's hands flew across the controls, his eyes frantically scanning the tactical display. The TAC had kept the Enola Gay 2 armed and ready for battle, its weapons hot and primed. "Surrender immediately, human," Xanth's voice crackled over the comms. "You cannot hope to outrun the Inexorable. I will grant you a swift death for your insolence." Ryan snarled and slammed his fist on the weapons console. The Enola Gay 2 shuddered as her main cannons roared to life, spitting a salvo of superheated plasma at Xanth's cruiser. The Inexorable's shields flared and died under the onslaught, unable to withstand the human ship's surprising firepower. Explosions blossomed along the cruiser's hull as it listed away, trailing smoke and debris. Not waiting to savor his victory, Ryan punched in a course out of the TAC system. He had to reach the Galactic Council, had to warn them of Xanth's genocidal plans. The stars blurred as the Enola Gay 2's engines pushed her to the brink, eating up the light years. But as Ryan approached the system's edge, his heart sank. A massive TAC battleship hung in space before him, dwarfing the Enola Gay 2. Its guns were already swiveling to lock on. "Did you really think you could escape, human?" Xanth's voice oozed from the speakers once more. Somehow the Admiral had survived the destruction of his cruiser and made it to the battleship. "Your pitiful vessel is no match for the might of the TAC fleet. Surrender now, and I promise your death will be relatively painless." Ryan gritted his teeth, his mind racing. Xanth was right. Even with the Enola Gay 2's advanced weaponry, he couldn't hope to win a straight fight against a battleship. But maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to. "Xanth," Ryan called, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "I'll never surrender to a monster like you." "Then you will die screaming," Xanth replied, and the battleship opened fire. The Enola Gay 2 shook as the first volley slammed into her shields. Alarms blared and sparks flew from overloaded consoles, but Ryan paid them no heed. With a defiant roar, he gunned the engines and aimed the human warship straight at the TAC battleship. It was a desperate gamble, a suicide run, but it was the only move Ryan had left. The Enola Gay 2 accelerated to ramming speed, her abused frame groaning under the strain as Ryan pushed her to the limit. The battleship grew larger and larger in the view screen, until it filled Ryan's entire world, its guns still thundering in a vain attempt to stop the human juggernaut. At the last possible second, Ryan wrenched the controls to the side. The Enola Gay 2 lurched, her hull screaming as she barely missed the battleship's bridge, but the human ship's withering broadside found its mark, ripping into the larger vessel's hull and opening her up to space. The battleship shuddered, explosions marching across her superstructure, as atmosphere vented from 100 breaches. She began to list, her drives flickering and failing as the Enola Gay 2 shot past, skating the edge of the expanding debris field. Ryan didn't look back, didn't slow down. He had bought himself some time, nothing more. The TAC would be after him in force now, and he had a long way to go before he reached the safety of the Galactic Council. But he would make it. He had to. The fate of the Kular and perhaps the galaxy itself depended on him. Ryan set his jaw and pushed the throttle to the firewall, the stars blurring into streaks of light as the Enola Gay II raced onward, carrying her lone human cargo into the void. The battleship's guns thundered as Ryan pushed the throttle to the max, the inertial dampeners straining to keep him from being crushed by the G-forces. The Enola Gay II shot forward on a collision course with the massive tac-tac vessel, its shields flaring as they absorbed the incoming fire. At the last possible moment, Ryan slammed the stick hard to the right, sending the human warship into a dizzying barrel roll. The Enola Gay II corkscrewed along the battleship's hull, so close that Ryan could see the rivets in its armored plates. Sparks flew as the Enola Gay II's shields scraped against the tac-tac vessel's own protective barrier. As they passed the battleship's bridge, Ryan's fingers flew over the weapons console, priming the ship's ace in the hole, an experimental EMP cannon, a relic of the tac-tac's own research from before the war that ended Earth. With a triumphant shout, Ryan fired the EMP directly at the battleship's command center. A sphere of flickering blue energy engulfed the tac-tac vessel, the electromagnetic pulse frying its systems in a cascade of overloads and explosions. Lights winked out across the battleship's hull as it went dark, drifting dead in space. Not waiting to celebrate his victory, Ryan punched in the coordinates for the Galactic Council's headquarters on Sirius 6. The stars stretched into lines as the Enola Gay II leapt to faster-than-light speeds, leaving the crippled tac-tac battleship and a doubtlessly enraged Admiral Xanth far behind. Hours later, Ryan dropped out of FTL in orbit around Sirius 6, the verdant world filling the view screen. He had sent a message ahead, requesting an emergency audience with the Council to reveal the tac-tac's genocidal intentions. As Ryan brought the Enola Gay II in for a landing on the Council's designated pad, his heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread. He didn't know what kind of reception to expect, but he knew he had to try. The fate of the Kular, and possibly the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. But as the human warship touched down, Ryan's blood ran cold. Surrounding the landing pad was a veritable army, the armed forces of at least a dozen different galactic races, their weapons all trained on the Enola Gay II. Before Ryan could even reach for the comms to demand an explanation, a voice crackled over the speakers. The voice of the Galactic Council's arbiter, the ultimate authority in matters of interspecies law. "Human," the arbiter's voice boomed, "you are under arrest for crimes against galactic peace. Surrender immediately and exit your ship, or we will open fire." Ryan's mind reeled. This made no sense. He had come to warn the Council, to seek their help in stopping Xanth's mad plan. How could they be accusing him of war crimes? The arbiter's next words hit Ryan like a punch to the gut. "Admiral Xanth of the tac-tac has already presented evidence of your guilt to this Council. You stand accused of stealing the Enola Gay II as part of a plot to reignite the ancient war between humanity and the tac-tac. If you do not surrender now, you will be destroyed." Ryan's hands clenched into fists, his nails biting into his palms. Xanth had outplayed him, beating him to the Council and spinning a web of lies to paint Ryan as the aggressor. The human squeezed his eyes shut, his mind racing. He couldn't fight his way out of this, not against the combined might of the Council races, but he couldn't surrender either. Xanth would make sure he never got a chance to tell his side of the story. There was only one option left, one desperate gamble. Ryan's eyes snapped open, a plan already forming. His hands flew over the Enola Gay II's controls as he prepared to make his move, knowing that the next few minutes would decide not just his fate, but the fate of billions. Ryan's hands trembled as he reached for the Enola Gay II's controls, powering down her weapons systems. The weight of his failure pressed down on him like a physical force, threatening to crush him. He had gambled everything on this desperate ploy, and he had lost. Xanth had outplayed him at every turn. With a heavy heart, Ryan stepped out of the ship, raising his hands in surrender as the Council's security forces swarmed around him. He could see the accusation in their eyes, the disgust at his supposed crimes. They believed Xanth's lies, and why wouldn't they? To them, he was just a human, a member of a disgraced species with a history of violence and destruction. As the guards moved in to slap restraints on his wrists, Ryan made his move. His hand darted to his belt, activating a hidden comm device he had smuggled aboard the Enola Gay II. In an instant, his conversation with Xanth about the planned Kular genocide was broadcast to every screen and speaker in the council chamber. Gasps of shock and outrage filled the air as Xanth's treachery was laid bare for all to see. The Tak-Tak Admiral's image flickered on the screens, his grating voice echoing through the chamber as he outlined his monstrous plan. The delegates erupted into a frenzy of shouted questions and accusations, their voices blending into a cacophony of anger and disbelief. For a moment, Ryan allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. He had done it. He had exposed Xanth's lies and revealed the truth to the galaxy. Surely now the Council would act, would rally to defend the Kular from the Tak-Tak's genocidal ambitions. But his hope was short-lived. On the screens, Xanth's face contorted with rage and humiliation as he realized his plans had been exposed. With a roar of fury, the Tak-Tak Admiral slammed his fist down on the console before him. "All ships commence the attack," Xanth bellowed, his voice cracking with madness. "Destroy the Kular now before the Council can interfere." Ryan's heart seized with horror. He had underestimated the depths of Xanth's insanity, the lengths to which the Admiral would go to see his twisted vision realized. Even now, with his crimes exposed to the entire galaxy, Xanth was pushing forward with his plan, determined to commit genocide before anyone could stop him. In that moment, Ryan knew what he had to do. With a burst of desperate strength, he wrenched free of his captor's grasp, sending them sprawling to the ground. Ignoring the shouts of alarm and the whine of blaster rifles powering up behind him, Ryan sprinted back to the Enola Gay II, leaping into the pilot's seat and slamming the hatch closed behind him. His hands flew over the controls, the ship's engines roaring to life as he pushed them to their limit. The Enola Gay II blasted off from the landing pad, her hull shuddering as she clawed her way into the sky. On the screens, Ryan could see the Council's ships scrambling to pursue him, but he paid them no heed. All that mattered now was reaching the Kular before it was too late. The stars blurred into streaks of light as Ryan pushed the Enola Gay II harder than he ever had before, the inertial dampeners straining to keep him from being crushed by the acceleration. He could feel the ship's frame groaning around him, the metal creaking and popping as it was pushed to the breaking point. But still he pushed harder, his eyes locked on the nav screen as the distance to Kular space ticked down with agonizing slowness. Every second felt like an eternity, every parsec an unbridgeable gulf. He knew that Xanth's fleet was racing towards the Kular homeworld at the same moment, their bioweapons primed and ready to erase an entire species from the galaxy. At last, after what felt like an eternity, the Enola Gay II dropped out of FTL at the edge of Kular space. Ryan's heart sank as he saw the Tak-Tak fleet arrayed before him, their ships bristling with weapons as they prepared to unleash their horrific payload on the unsuspecting Kular below. With a final, desperate prayer, Ryan opened a channel to the Tak-Tak fleet, his voice shaking with emotion as he pleaded with them to halt their attack. "Please, you have to stop this," he cried, his words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "The Kular are innocent. Xanth has been lying to you, using you. If you do this, you'll be no better than the monsters you claim to fight." For a moment, there was silence on the comm, and Ryan dared to hope that his words had reached them, that the Tak-Tak would see reason and stand down. But then Xanth's voice cut through the silence, dripping with contempt and malice. "You think your pathetic pleas can sway us, human?" the Admiral sneered. "We are the Tak-Tak. We do not answer to the likes of you." Xanth's image appeared on the screen, his compound eyes blazing with hate. "All ships, open fire," he roared. "Burn the Kular from the stars." Time seemed to slow to a crawl as Ryan watched the Tak-Tak ships power up their weapons, the muzzles of their cannons glowing with malevolent energy. He knew he had only seconds to act, to make one final, desperate play to save the Kular from annihilation. With a wordless cry of defiance, Ryan wrenched the Enola Gay II's controls, sending the ship hurtling towards the center of the Tak-Tak formation. Alarms blared, and warning lights flashed as he pushed the engines beyond their limits, the hull shaking so violently that he could feel his teeth rattling in his skull. The tac-tac ships loomed before him, growing larger and larger with each passing second. Ryan could see the surprise and confusion on the faces of their crews as they realized what he was doing, could hear their panicked shouts and curses filling the comm channels. But he blocked it all out, his eyes locked on his target, the largest of the bioweapon ships, the one that carried the bulk of the genocidal payload. With a final, defiant roar, Ryan rammed the Enola Gay II into the heart of the tac-tac vessel, the human ship's reinforced hull crumpling like tin foil as it smashed through the bioweapon ship's outer plating. For a single, breathless moment, the two ships hung together in space, locked in a fatal embrace, and then, with a blinding flash of light, the Enola Gay II's antimatter reactor detonated, consuming both ships in a maelstrom of fire and radiation. The explosion ripped through the tac-tac fleet like a tidal wave, shattering hulls and vaporizing flesh in an instant. The bioweapon ships were consumed in the inferno, their horrific cargo incinerated before it could be unleashed upon the Kula below. In that moment, Ryan knew that he had done it. He had sacrificed everything, his ship, his life, to save an entire species from genocide. As the flames consumed him, he felt a sense of peace wash over him, a calm acceptance of his fate. He had made a difference. He had shown the galaxy that even one human, armed with nothing but courage and conviction, could change the course of history. With that final thought, Ryan closed his eyes and surrendered himself to the light. In the aftermath of the battle, the truth of the tac-tac's deception was revealed to the galaxy. Faced with incontrovertible evidence of Xanth's treachery, the Galactic Council moved swiftly to arrest the disgraced admiral and his co-conspirators, bringing them to stand trial for their crimes against sentience. The tac-tac, once one of the most feared and respected races in the galaxy, found themselves facing the full wrath of the Council. They were stripped of their military power, their fleets dismantled, and their weapons destroyed. They were forced to pay heavy reparations to the Kula to help rebuild what they had tried to destroy. But even as the tac-tac were brought low, the galaxy remembered the sacrifice of Ryan, the human who had given his life to save a species he had never met. Across 1,000 worlds, statues and memorials were raised in his honor, his name becoming a byword for courage and selflessness. To the Kula, Ryan became a savior, a figure of almost religious veneration. They pledged to remember his sacrifice forever, to honor his memory by building a society based on peace and understanding, rather than fear and hatred. But even as the galaxy celebrated Ryan's heroism, the scars of his sacrifice lingered. For the Kula, the knowledge that they had come so close to annihilation, that their fate had hinged on the actions of a single brave human, was a heavy burden to bear. They knew that they would forever be haunted by the specter of what might have been, by the knowledge that their survival had come at the cost of Ryan's life. And for the tac-tac, the shame of their leader's actions was a stain that could never be fully washed away. They had been willing to commit genocide, to erase an entire species from the stars, and that knowledge would forever color their interactions with the rest of the galaxy. They would spend generations struggling to rebuild their reputation, to prove that they were more than the sum of their worst impulses. In the end, Ryan's sacrifice had bought the galaxy a chance at peace, a chance to build a future free from the cycle of hatred and violence that had consumed it for so long. But it was a fragile peace, one that would require constant vigilance and sacrifice to maintain. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.